Have you ever had your heart broken, or is your heart broken right now? 81% of Americans report having been heartbroken at some point. Only 61% of Brits. That stiff upper lip protecting us still from the horrors of heartbreak. And if you are heartbroken, how do you heal from a broken heart? Through self-help, personal development, religion, or science? Let's look at heartbreak and some solutions, ending with some tips for how to overcome heartbreak. So stay to the end for that.
Chan, a relationship columnist and businesswoman, created the Renew Breakup Boot Camp, a retreat that takes a scientific and spiritual approach to healing the heart.
In a way, a scientific and spiritual approach is probably what ought to be applied to most of the problems in our life. Heartbreak is a spiritual problem. Obviously, it has a biochemical, neurological, and anatomical component to it because it's happening in all of those areas. Usually, I think when you're heartbroken, it's because you have invested something significant about yourself in the relationship, and when that doesn't go your way, you're suddenly confronted with everything that you had embedded in the relationship. Now, I say this because if a relationship ends, I believe it's supposed to end, you know, that you can't hold on to the idea that I should be in this relationship, that person has made a mistake, or circumstances or life itself has made a mistake by not keeping me and that person together. But my God, when my own heart is broken through the fog of emotion and hormonal disruption, I can't see a way out of it. And blunt rationalism or sharp rationalism isn't enough to cut my way out of that pain. I need some kind of transcendent tool, whether that's a scientific or spiritual one. We are as yet to determine. I can't see that it would be a boot camp, for God's sake, but a kind of retreat, a time set aside to overcome the disruption and pain of heartbreak, I suppose does seem like an interesting solution.
She says there's science behind healing, and it takes time.
In the very beginning, you just want to be able to feel your emotions.
Reflect on past relationships that weren't successful.
Identify, is there an emotional experience that keeps on repeating?
That's very interesting. I know that a lot of my relationships in the past have had comparable components to them. Like when I look back at relationships, I can recognize mistakes that I made in the relationships themselves, in the type of relationships I was in what my expectations were from relationships. If there was one thing that I reckon I could convey, it's the belief that another person can complete you or make you whole. But that is kind of stitched into our culture. My other half, the better half, you know, like these kind of ideas, even in many marriages, sharing a name with the person you've married, a second name, you know, like all of these ideas suggest a kind of wholeness. And I suppose a tribal identity, a familial identity, or an identity with a partner, they're so important for all of us. As long as we remember that you can't actually expect another person to solve your bloody problems. And like, so this idea of pointing out patterns, I think, is significant. But firstly, we should point out that even from a scientific perspective, there is something real in heartbreak, because you know, that whole idea of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, snap out of it, plenty more fish in the sea. These kind of cliched solutions, as married to those aphorisms, they never bloody helped me. In 2011, a study found out that brains react the same to being shown a photograph of a former love and having your arm burnt, which, again, I'm always interested in the ethics of these experiments, like, it's a very cruel thing to undertake with someone, but the fact is pain, which is why I've often said that the opioid crisis in America is a spiritual crisis, because why do you want to numb pain? What is the pain you're trying to deal with a pain oppressant like an opioid? In 2018, a study found out that widows and widowers are 41% more likely to die within the first 6 months after losing their spouse. And you hear that all the time, don't you, about like one person dies and the other one dies not long after. The researchers suspect this was the result of a 53% increase in the risk of cardiovascular disease. It's literally a broken heart. I suppose we have to look at the various categories. Sometimes there are relationships that you're in for a very long time that you're fully immersed in, and then they end. It's heartbreaking. Sometimes it's that giddy rush of someone you've known for a month. Man, over the course of my life, I think I fell in love first maybe at like 11. I mean, there's so many, in my case, females that I can remember being in love with and being just completely lost in those relationships. And it's only now, with the benefit of hindsight, that I have to acknowledge the psychological terrain that I was coming from. I was a person that was looking for something, looking for a solution, felt alienated, isolated, alone. What are the conditions for a healthy relationship? Well, that's another video, and by God, we're going to make it. But when a relationship ends, I think the first thing, the most important thing, is absolute acceptance. Acceptance that you're powerless over that relationship. It's ended now. Let go of it. So like a retreat, I suppose, is an interesting idea, because you're moving away and you're specifically acknowledging that this problem's happened. You're not trying to deny it.
Find a positive outlet for those negative feelings.
Go for a jog. Put on your favorite dance playlist.
I don't know that I can, I guess the problem is with something as severe and acute as heartbreak, many of these solutions may seem trite, but one of the things that I can definitely support is that when you experience extreme pain like that, you have to allow yourself to feel it. My concern with going for a jog, trying to run away from heartbreak, might not be the right thing to do. I personally have to allow myself to fully experience pain. I have to allow it to sort of come in.
She says expand your horizons.
Date 10 different people who you normally would not.
I don't know about that as a solution. Also, what about that thing though, when you're really in love with someone and then you do go on a date with another person and you're like, oh no, this isn't them, this isn't them. I don't know about that.
Her final message.
One thing that could really help us is if we redefined what love is. Because love is not this anxiety-ridden push and pull, unhealthy, toxic dynamic. It's not a relationship where you doubt your self-worth and your self-confidence. That's not love.
This, I suppose, points to a larger problem. Most of us, to some degree or another, are working out our unconscious neuroses in the drama of our lives, whether that's in our working lives or our romantic life. If you feel deep down that you're not good enough, you will work that drama out through your relationships, through your working life, etc. So when identifying what you're looking for in a relationship, I think it's important to start dealing with your ulterior problems and acknowledging that they cannot be resolved by a perfect relationship, that there is no person that is gonna zap you into happiness.
Amy says love is always in us, and it isn't just a feeling, it's an action. So during these...
Not only Amy, Jesus and Muhammad and Buddha and almost everything. Love is always in us. Love, I believe, to be the impulse towards and the instinctual understanding of union. Something in us recognizes that separation is not our ultimate state, just a temporary instantiation of a kind of cellular self on our way to the expansive realization of oneness. This is a very hard idea to conceptualize and hold, so we tend to, like ducklings, imprint it on individuals. I love this pair of shoes, I love that football team, I love that other human being, that dog, whatever. But really, love is all inclusive and all expansive, and it is being generated, or at least received, within. How could it be otherwise? And by understanding that, by doing the necessary spiritual work to experience love through yourself and through, a kind of a pan love, pan amore, that's what I want to say. If you could experience that, then you're less likely to experience heartbreak, because you can fall in love with people, but you can recognize that they are separate from you and that they can never resolve you. Other tips for overcoming heartbreak are: hear other people's stories so you don't feel alone. That helps me with any kind of neurosis or psychosis. Process your grief while allowing room for distraction. That seems like pretty good, ubiquitous or sort of universal rather advice. Surround yourself with people who support you. Absolutely necessary. I agree with that. Plan things to look forward to. I think that makes sense. And push yourself to create new routines and habits. Most of all, I think it's acknowledge within yourself that while you may identify strongly with the stimulant, the external thing, the person that has left or the heartbreak that you've incurred, bring your attention to the stimulation, the inner event. What is it that I am feeling? You might not be correctly diagnosing the problem. You'll say, oh, I feel these things because I've lost this person. But in actuality, the problem, I believe, is as a result of false attachment to an external phenomena. In a sense, I love and adore my wife, but the difference between this relationship and the relationships that I've had in the past is I no longer, when I'm awake, expect my wife to provide solutions to the problem of being me. I pursue solutions to that problem independently and, you know, collegiately with other people, by use of meditation and prayer, by staying awake in general and not always believing my own thoughts and emotions, and importantly by acknowledging that there's someone else in there. Over the course of a life of falling in love and having my heart broken, I suppose what the journey of maturation, which is of course ongoing, has revealed is that I have to have a sense of connection and wholeness that is not dependent on another person. So if I was younger, or, you know, even if I wasn't younger, if I was going to be meeting people and falling in love now, I would try to remain as objective as I could when the flood of love enters, knowing that at some point it will depart, either because of the relationship ending or because of the impossibility of sustaining that level of interest and excitement for, you know, with the mandala of a fallible person who one way or another is going to let you down eventually because of the nature of things. But what is eternal? What is eternal? What is it you are reaching for really when you're falling in love? If you've got any comments on that video, leave them below. If you liked it, press like, you know, give it the old thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. Our Awakening channel is very important to me, and I'd love for you to subscribe to it. If you like this, why don't you subscribe to Luminary as well, where I do a guided meditation once a week and I talk to very influential thinkers. You can get it now on Apple. It's easily done. And also sign up to my mailing list on russellbrand.com. Thanks very much for watching.